Sorry, I had to take a week off. I was getting some things done for the Sci-Fi Bartow that I was participating in. I am sad to report that I did not win, but it was a great time. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So today I'm working on a 16 by 20 that I repainted from a previous canvas. And you can always reuse canvas provided you haven't layered too much over top of it. And so what you would do if you want to do that is just do two thin coats of white. You can still see that there's something under here, but that's not a problem since I'm going to paint over it. And this kind of thing is best done if you want to do something that's very textured or when you know you're going to reuse the canvas for something that might be more personal, just because that way, if it isn't totally perfect, you can go back and rework it a little more. So we're going to start with putting in our rainbow background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a wash of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. And then I might like flick in some like white paint spatters in a couple of places. And then I'm going to dry it all. And then I'm going to work in my girl. And you can kind of see her off to the left. I sketched her out this afternoon. And what she kind of is going to be is like a paint palette skirt, and we're gonna have like little bits of paint on it, and you can see she's got like a cute little bow and little brushes in there, so it's gonna be something kind of fun and artsy. I'm kind of feeling bad that I missed out on the Festival of the Arts this year at Epcot, so this is sort of my tribute for that. Now, because my canvas is so big, when I'm putting in my background, I'm going to use a 1.5 inch angle, but if you're using something smaller, a regular like 1 inch straight would be more than sufficient. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. And for my red, I'm starting with Naphthol Crimson because this is what I have on hand. You could use cadmium red hue or anything, any other, shade of red that you're wanting, or if you only want to do a certain color of the spectrum. But because I'm kind of taking in with that Festival of the Arts vibe, I'm going for the whole rainbow. And I'm just going to quick lob the paint on there. I'm not going to think too hard about this. I had a great time at Sci-Fi Bartow this last weekend. It was such a great time. I did not win the Miss Sci-Fi competition, but it was still very fun. And I got to meet some of my friends, and I made some new friends, and I took some fun pictures, and you can kind of see those over on Instagram if you're interested. It was just a good time. I definitely look forward to going back next year. It's great because it's a free event. All right, now I'm going to do my sides real quick. And I'm going to kind of just tilt over this way so it's a little bit easier to get at. And then I'm going to do the top real quick. And then the bottom. All right. And since I'm going to be going with a rainbow, I'm not going to rinse off my brush. I'm just going to go ahead and stick the orange down on my palette. And I'm going to kind of overlap them some. I don't want to mix them over much, but I'm going to overlap them just a little. All right, and I don't want to forget the top. And I don't want to forget the bottom. Okay, I am going to rinse off a little now just because yellow is a little more finicky. And I might wind up putting, stretching out these layers a little bit just because I think my canvas might not be wide enough for everything that I'm wanting. Or I might wind up putting in more shades of the green and whatnot than I'm thinking I might. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Right, next for yellow, I'm doing Brilliant Yellow. And before I mix, I'm gonna put my base layer in because I don't want to contaminate my yellow that much. Just because it would be really hard to work it back in after the fact because it's so opaque. Right, and then I'm going to turn it over so I can get the bottom. And now I'm going to blend it a little bit with my orange. And I'm just kind of dragging over the line. And now I'm going to rinse. And now I'm going to do a light green. And again, because I want to be careful not to outstrip the yellow, I'm going to get close, but I'm not going to mix over until I'm ready to do that. All right, and now I'll go ahead and kind of blur that line a little bit. And it might require adding a little bit of yellow over top just to get a good blend. Right, now I'm going to do the bottom. The top. And I didn't quite get all of my yellow there, so I'm just going to quick put that in. Right, now I'm going to rinse a little bit, and I'm going to stick in my blue, and I'm going to do just primary blue. And I might go ahead and go back over this with a little bit of UV color too, because I think that might be kind of exciting. And again, because this is very like dark in comparison to the green, I am gonna just kiss the side of it before I actually mix the color lines together. Because I don't want to completely overshadow the green. I don't want it lost. All right, I'm going to do the top real quick. And the bottom. I'm going to straighten my line out a little bit. There. All right, and now I'm going to merge the lines over. Right, and I'm going to wind up taking a little bit of green and going over to kind of help blend that line a little bit. Okay, and now we're going to add some purple in. And now for the purple. And because this is also kind of dark, I'm not super worried about getting super up close to it. It'll be fine. All right, and now we're going to stick in, well, actually, I'm going to blend that line a little bit. We're going to blend that line just a little. Make a sort of indigo shade there. Okay. And now we're going to put in our pink. Well, I can't forget about the bottom and the top. I do have to do that first, too. So I'm going to do that real quick. Make sure we got our top covered. And our bottom. Okay. And I'm going to stick my pink on. And I don't mind if it butts right up against that because it's not going to change the color overall. Okay. And then we're going to blend that line a little bit, and then we'll start getting our sides and our top. And we might stick a little bit more purple over here to help blend this a little bit, kind of tell that story. My father-in-law was wonderful enough to make this wonderful new easel for me so that it is very sturdy and it doesn't move around on me anymore. All right, and now I'm going to get the top and the bottom. Okay, and now I'm going to put my paintbrush in the water and I am going to start drying my canvas. I'm actually going to do a quick little touch-up layer where you can kind of see some of the streakiness, and I don't want quite that much streakiness, so I'm going to go back in with my 1-inch brush and do a little bit of like of another coat on my color here, so it's super vibrant. I want this very, very artsy and fun. And then I'll touch up on the orange. We just want a really good, vibrant base layer before we get started. And I'm going to rinse and add in my next layer of yellow. And I'm going to kind of blend it into my orange. Right, and then a little quick touch up on the green. And you'll notice that your colors get darker as you build your layers, especially if you're using student grade paint. Because student grade paint is usually a little bit washed out, thinned. Not that it's not good, not that it doesn't have its purpose, and it's quite helpful in this case. Right, now a quick layer of blue. And the blue is where I was mostly seeing the blue and the purple, the bulk of that streakiness that I was trying to have to hide, that I don't want in my painting. Not that it wouldn't work with this aesthetic, but it's just not the aesthetic that I want. And now for the purple. A little more purple in my palette. And I'm going to rinse off, and I'm going to blend that line with the pink a little. Once I kind of get rid of that streakiness. Now I'm happier with that. I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to dry again. And then I think I'm going to do some white paint splatters. All right, I'm going to use Flow Acrylic White for what I'm going to do next, because I really want it to be able to just kind of fling on my canvas for what I'm wanting. And I'm going to use a good old-fashioned toothbrush for that. I'm going to dip my toothbrush in water. And I'm not going to rinse it off too much. I'm going to let it drip. And then I'm going to put my tips down in the white, just a little. Kind of going to smear it across the top. And then I'm just going to literally fling it. right, and I'm going to do just a little more so it's a little more balanced because the top's a little heavier than the bottom. Definitely protect your area or do it outside. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment and I'm going to go wash my hands before I pick up any more paint. Thank you for being patient. And it's a good time if you did manage to get, paint anywhere on your surfaces. Before it dries is a good time to get it taken care of. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and dry it because I need my surface dry so I can start using some chalk pencil to start chalking in my girl. And yes, I did get, but that's part of the course, part of the course for me. Messy paint. There's that. Now, I'm going to take my chalk pencil and I'm going to start kind of chalking in where my girl is going to go. And actually, this pencil is a little too new and it's a little too rough to work with, so I'm going to switch over to a piece of regular chalk for a moment. Regular school chalk. And I'm going to kind of create the bodice a little bit. Easier for me to think about where I'm going once the dress is in. All right, and actually it would be a little angled that way, but okay. And then we've got a little belt, and we're gonna say that it comes to here, and we're just gonna make a few placeholder ruffle bits. Doesn't have to be exact. For now, we're just kind of marking in our area. And that needs to come out a little more that way. And for her neck, she kind of has her head angled this way. We'll go ahead and place the idea of where her face goes. Her face is kind of off to the angle there. So that way we can kind of put in the idea of where her arm is. And then this one kind of gets angled out behind her. Okay, now I'm going to kind of think about her hair, because this might be her whole head, but her hair is going to come up some of that way. So there's hair. We'll put in a bit of a hairline there. And it's going to come up a little bit. And this will actually be kind of a loopy bit there. And we'll talk about the bow a little bit. She's got kind of a adorable little bow going on, a little big bow there. We don't got to talk about her brushes too much sticking up out of her hair. We can worry about that later. Right, now we're going to angle her face a little bit. And I think that's mostly good. Oh, maybe I made the skirt too long because I didn't really leave a lot of room for her legs. Well, improvise. We'll shorten the skirt up a little bit. And this is why we chalk first. I'm sure I did not draw this to the same scale I originally did, but that's okay. We now have room for legs. It has to be balanced. Okay, and the legs kind of, it's an angle this way. And she's got kind of a shoe gonna go in there. We won't worry about that. For now, we're just gonna place the idea of where her legs are meant to go. It's a little wider than I meant. There we go. Okay, that's good enough for our purposes for right now. Okay, so I'm going to start painting her in. And I'm going to use a 1/2 angle for this. All right, so I know that her skirt is going to be white. So I'm going to kind of paint in that area white. And if you need to paint your lines or change your lines a little bit as you're going, you know, that's why we do it in chalk. This is all just kind of place holding. So don't treat your lines like you have to follow them directly. Once you get it down and it doesn't feel right, you can always change it. Right, and you're gonna want the brush strokes to be looking like they're coming from like the base of this skirt, since we're talking about it in terms of like fabric. And that's the way you would have designed a skirt like this. It would all be coming from the angle of the fabric would be coming up from the top. So even though I used the angle brush to create the shape, you're ultimately going to make sure your brush strokes are coming from this waistband area. If you were doing this on a smaller canvas, you could have printed off the stencil if you're a Patreon member and used the medium technique, the gel medium, to just stick the drawing directly on the canvas. But since I've decided to do this one much bigger because I was very excited about it, I opted not to do that. And now I'm putting in the bodice of this. The bodice is the top part of a dress. And again, you're going to want it to kind of follow the idea of the way the fabric would be. And we'll have to fill in her body in white as well. But I want us, before we do that, to kind of get the idea of the dress in place. So I'm going to rinse off my brush. And I'm going to grab some gray. Because we kind of got to talk about shading and whatnot on this dress. And I'm going to grab a small brush. I'm going to grab a 1 round. And actually, I'm going to grab a 4 round for what I'm doing. And I'm going to kind of, from like the points of here, I'm going to kind of indicate kind of pleating in the fabric. Like that's where a panel would be, or a seam of some kind. I'm implying that there is volume there. And again, you'll want to do a little more layer of your white. You want to color in your background. So this is true kind of white. We're going to wind up putting our paint wells in here too, but they should be, coming up and being very vibrant, especially when we put in our paint wells for our transparent warm colors. That don't show up or cover very well over other colors. Right, and I'm going to go back and add in some more like gray streaks, just because there is kind of shadow and shading to this dress. It isn't all like hitting the light the same way. And even though this part is not going all the way down, we should kind of talk about it. Just kind of blend it into your white. You don't want it to go all the way down because that isn't a panel, but you do want to indicate that, there's some dimension happening here. Okay, so we've kind of got that basin. And while I've got my white paint out, I'm going to go ahead and give the bodice another quick layer so that way it can be nice and bright.
And I think I'm going to kind of add a little bit of this gray kind of at the end of like just the left side of these little, because I'm kind of indicating that's the way the light is hitting the fabric. And if it gets away from you and you get a little too much, you can always blend in some more white to soften it back up. Okay. And now I'm going to kind of fill in the body up here a little bit. I'm going to make sure I follow the lines of the body so that way I remember where the dress ends. So when I stick my skin fabric over top, I know where to stop at. And on the other side, the same thing. You want to make sure you follow the lines of the arm. It'll help you remember where the lines of the dress actually are. So when you put in your skin, you don't wind up painting away your whole bodice and having her being topless. We don't want that. Unless you do. I mean, if that's what you want, you do you. That's not what I want. And I'm going to go ahead and put in my neck. And I'm going to kind of abandon one of my lines there a little bit because I think I made her neck a little too chunky originally. So I'm thinning it out. And I'm going to go ahead and put in her face too. For this one, you'll kind of want to go round and kind of try to avoid having too many strokes. Okay, now I'm going to rinse my brush. And I'm going to use Naples yellow mixed with white. Oh, hi! How are you doing? Looking forward for this piece being finished. I'm very excited about it. I wound up covering an old mermaid witch painting for this. I decided I wanted it big. All right, so I'm gonna kind of put in my Naples yellow, and you can, customize this to whatever skin tone makes the most sense for you. If you're a little darker, you might want to mix in a little burnt sienna, or depending on your shade, you might want burnt umber. And mix and match as to whatever is most appropriate. We'll wind up going over this with another layer because yellow is a warm color, and as I've said before, warm is very transparent. So even coming over this blue, even though I put white down first, up close, I can still see the blue underneath, so I know I'm going to have to do another layer. So right now we are just putting in our base in. And I'm going to go ahead and put my neck in. And remember what I said before, being careful to not paint out your dress. Unless, of course, you do in fact want to be topless. And again, that is a you decision. I'm thinking this one will probably go up in my in the craft room when I'm finished. I'm thinking it's going to look awesome. Okay, so I've kind of got my base layer in for my arms and my neck. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in my face. And again, I know I'm going to have to go over with another layer because I can still see all of my wonderful little rainbow underneath. Not that that's not a problem. I could make that kind of a motif for this part of my painting, but I'm choosing not to. It's not what my current vision entails. Now I'll show you real quick what could happen with Naples yellow if I tried going there. I mean, you can see right through there. So I needed to put a base layer of my white in my legs before you can put in the color of your skin. And I've got kind of a meaty thigh, so I drew my thighs kind of, or my yeah. Well, my calf is kind of thick. Very muscular from all the walking I do not do anymore. And I'm not going to get too worried about getting my shoe all the way in right now or all of my foot in right now. For now, I'm just kind of going to put in the idea of where the foot kind of goes. And I think that's good for now. I'll go ahead and put some of my skin color over it. And now I'm going to go ahead and put in my other leg. And this one will be kind of weird because the shoe is sort of off to an angle. So it's going to look kind of like my foot is coming to a point. And that's kind of what you'll need here for this. Because this one, your foot is pointed out, like a proper Darlin toe point. And I do think I'm not going to use my entire chalk line that I originally chalked out. I do think I'm going to make it a little thinner. And I think I'm going to extend this up this way a little more. But that is why we chalk it out first, in case we change our minds. And just so I don't ever get it mixed up with my skirt, I am going to go ahead and put a quick little mix in some of my skin tone in here. Just so it doesn't get lost. Now you'll see the yellow over the yellow covers obviously very well, because it's light. Okay. So while we're letting those assorted areas dry, I'm going to go ahead and start sticking in my hair. And because this area where the hair is much lighter, I'm not as worried about it, but I will stick a little white kind of where the green bit is, because I am going to be using a red ochre for the color of my hair, because it's kind of a washed out red, mostly because I really need to dye it. I used a henna hair dye last time and it did not work as well. It worked really well actually, but it didn't come out as vibrant as when you use like a non-natural hair dye. Whether I'll do that again, I don't know. We'll see. I'm still kind of waiting to see how I feel about it. I still have a little more of the henna dye in my tube. But for my hair, it's kind of a ruddy red-brown right now. So I'm using red ochre for my hair. If you're blonde, you might want to continue using like a yellow ochre with Naples yellow, or if you've got Technicolor hair, you do you, but just make sure if you do have vibrant color hair that you're not mixing it into your background so that it still pops. If you've got black hair, you will still want to mix in a little bit of dark brown or burnt umber to create some highlight. Because your hair is not all one color and it all kind of hits the sun differently. And when you're doing hair, you want to use short, repeated strokes because hair has texture. It's not one-dimensional. There's a lot of it. Well, generally, there's a lot of it, but that depends on the person. But Even though my hair is very thin, I still have a lot of hair and there is a lot of texture to it. So I'm going to literally just drop my brush kind of over top of it in several places. Not necessarily creating a stroke, but kind of using it like a filbert here. We're just creating the idea of some texture. And because this side is all yellow, and I'm going to be doing my signature kind of hair wave here. So my part is here. So I have to make sure that I tell like the story of this part. And the hair for me, I kind of push it over this way and then it kind of overlaps onto itself. So the hair at this point would kind of flip around. So this part would be darker and then it would get lighter as it approaches the light and then sweeps back up this way. So I'm making sure my strokes are indicating which way my hair is being folded. And I'm going to use a little bit of yellow ochre to help kind of highlight that. Because it's not super visible, it's there, but it could be really called out more. So I'm going to take my small detail brush here. And I'm going to do a couple, because this part is the lightest part. So I'm going to kind of keep my strokes for this sort of here. And there'd be some over here too. So I'm going to go ahead and put a few over here. And I'm going to use a little bit of maybe some burnt sienna at the baseline over here to talk about how that part is set a little further back. When I find it. Here we go. And I'm going to use so little of this burnt sienna. And you can see burnt sienna is sort of a reddish brown. Then I'm going to leave it in the cap. I'm not even going to put it down on my palette. Because I'm just kind of talking about the fact that my roots are a little darker. And that this part is sort of behind the folds. It's further behind the layer. And to help kind of demonstrate that, there's that part to kind of begin that loop. And I think I'm going to tell a little bit of that story on the other side too at the root. I'm calling out my bad hair dye grooming practices. Don't be me. Get your hair done. And so now you can kind of see that the hair is going down and then comes back up and it's hitting the light. And just because there is some red vibrancy to my hair, I am going to put in some of that straight red from my background. I'm going to work it kind of in here in a couple of places, just so that it's there in part of the story. I'm vain enough that I can't admit that my hair is brown. Don't judge me. Okay. Now that area is kind of, I've worked on it a little bit, I'm gonna I don't know what I want to do for the color of my bow yet, so I'm gonna circle back to that spot. But I am gonna go ahead and put in my next layer of skin tone, so that way that's all in place. And we'll add a little bit of other colors to our skin when we're ready for that part. Because your skin is like your hair, it's not all one solid color. It all hits the sun differently. Some areas might have freckles, some areas might be in shadow. You know, your skin does not all hit the sunlight all the same way. I mean, if it did, we'd have much better pictures in our everyday lives, that's for sure. If I was to add like lace sleeves to this, it would honestly look in spiderweb at the trim. It would look a lot actually like my wedding dress, which might be why I wound up painting this style, because I do really like that style well enough that I was immensely photographed in it. Okay, and now I'm going to do a quick layer of skin tone at my legs. And you know, if you really wanted to, you could have not done a skin tone here. You could have said, hey, I'm wearing rainbow tights or whatever. You know, you could have totally had that been a thing. You know, however you want to do it. In fact, I may wind up putting like rainbow fishnet tights on this girl. I have not decided. I don't usually make decisions about paintings until I'm already 3/4 of the way done. And I'm trying to decide if it looks finished or not. And I think I'm going to, because the color isn't represented anywhere, I think I'm going to do a turquoise bow because that's my favorite color. So I'm going to put a little bit of white on my palette because I did run out. And I'm going to paint in my bow. And this is a nice big bow because this is how I would wear this to the Festival of the Arts at Epcot. And the reason I'm being careful to, fill this in white first, even though I'm going to stick a blue shade over this, is because that light blue is still sort of transparent and it would turn to a very green over this yellow. So I'm just giving it an equal opportunity to do what I want it to do without having to do a billion layers. Doing one layer, thin layer of white is definitely better than doing like 6 layers of a blue to get the color to show the way you want. And I'm going to make a little correction for my chalk. I'm going to extend that bow in the center a little bit. There. Okay, and now I'm going to stick. In fact, I think I'm going to do a multicolor of seafoam and turquoise because these kind of appear a lot for me in my favorite colors. And again, I'm going to use so little of this that I'm just going to use the cap. And I'm going to have this be sort of towards the inside because I don't really want the green to overlap too much at the head. I'd rather that happen at the end. And maybe I might work like a light purple in there too. Be a tricolor bow. Okay. Now I'll do a little bit of seafoam, rinse my brush. And I'm gonna kind of blend it in here a little bit because I do kind of want it to go well and nicely together. Okay, and now we'll stick a little bit of purple. Our light purple, kind of a pastel hue. Just kind of up at the top. And we're not saying that these are Mickey ears because it's very obviously a bow, but I'm just saying if they made mini ears like this that I would probably wear them. And I'm going to kind of blend it in a little bit. And then over on this side. And I might do some adjustments there later, but for now, we'll leave that as it is. I'm going to stick a little more white in a couple of areas in the skirt. I'm not going to do like a special coating. I'm just kind of flicking the brush in a couple of places because I want to tell about the light a little more. And I want to make sure that these folds in the dress it's very highlighted and clear. Right, and I didn't call it out in the beginning, but I do want to kind of indicate that there are straps here on this dress. And we'll go ahead and add another quick layer on the bodice here because I can still see some green. And I think that for the waist, I will do the turquoise. Because the accessory has to match. So I'm just going to kind of follow along where the skirt meets the bodice to make the base. And I think the belt would be about this big. And I may wind up sticking a little bow off to the corner. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. Accessories. They're important. Now it looks even more like my wedding dress. Okay. Next, we're gonna probably have to dry this a little bit. Now we'll work in a different spot. We're not ready for that yet. I'm gonna start working on the face, I think. So the face is pretty simple. Actually, is that dry? No, it's not dry yet. We can't work on the face. Okay. I guess we're gonna be drying our canvas a little bit. Okay, now it should be okay. I'm gonna start kind of lining where I kind of want things to go on my face in yellow ochre because it's creating a bit of a shadow for myself. And my mouth is kind of gonna go here. And a little kind of silhouetted nose like that. And the face is kind of tilted. Oop, not quite that much though. Got a little more in depth than I meant to. It happens. So I kind of got the idea of where my face is going to go. And while I've got this little brush out, I'm going to go ahead and start kind of creating highlights on my arm. For where like arm muscles are and kind of just a little bit of directionality. And I'm going to actually stick also a little bit of white in there just so it doesn't get to be too overwhelming. We're just kind of allowing some contouring and some light, and it also helps kind of finish that layering of the colors. And I kind of feel like my neck got a little out of control there. I made it a little wider than I meant to, so I'm going to correct that real quick since I still have some of that green on my palette. I'm going to paint that back in and give myself more of a neck. There we go. Nice, easy correction. And I think I might thin it out a little on this side too. There. Quick and easy. All right, and a little bit of contouring on the neck. And the fact that it kind of goes down into the cleavage area. You would have more darkness directly under your face than anywhere. Ow! Cloud! Sorry, my dog was wearing a cone and it's scraping me. Because he can't stop getting into stuff. A little more Naples yellow because I got a little out of control here. Yeah. Okay, and a little on this arm, just a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of white. We're just creating the idea of light and shadows across the skin. You just don't want it to appear all one color. That's the primary thing. Okay, and then same down here. A little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of white. We're just creating the idea of light and value, that's all. Just giving some definition. And the same on the other foot. Okay. And I'm gonna do this a little on the face too, because there's still a few areas where I didn't quite get the coverage I wanted. And there's some areas on the face that would naturally have more light on it than others. So I'm going to kind of tell the story of that a little bit. Okay, and I lost my nose a little bit there, so I'm putting it back in. And your chin would naturally have a little shadow to it. So I'm going to kind of surround my face with it. And then kind of the cheek here would have light, so I'm putting a little white there. And the same on the other side, just a little bit of white kind of in the middle of the cheek. Okay, now we're going to fill in the whites of the eyes. And I'm going to go over with like a red. And I think I'm going to change the mouth. I meant to have it the open mouth, but I think I'd rather have just do like a small cute pair of lips. So I'm going to take a little bit of white and paint that out. I'll let that dry and come back to it. Okay. In the meantime, I will do a little bit of correction here. And I think I'm going to go ahead and start putting in like my little paint wells. So I'm going to have kind of a red one off there, a red, an orange, a yellow, a green, a blue. I don't think I'll get all of them. Like in my sketch, I only put 5. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. I'm thinking I'm going to do orange, yellow, oh, rather up here, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, pink, and let red be kind of facing away. Mostly because I don't like the color red. Yes, Cloud is a jerk. Cloud is an absolute jerk. Totally scraped up the whole backside of my leg because I wasn't paying him any attention. Okay, so I'm gonna take my detail brush, and this is meant to be like a standard paint thing, so it's not gonna be a perfect shape. In fact, they're all gonna be a tiny bit different. And we're telling the story of like this part of this skirt is kind of coming off from the side. I'm going to switch over to a slightly larger brush. I think he wants to eat the paint. I don't think it's about watching it. I think he's waiting. I think he thinks the palette thing is food. Is my honest opinion. And these are just going to be like little blob shapes because I'm just saying that I've put paint on my palette. And well, as you can see, when I put paint on my palette, it is not uniform or pretty. The holes are perfectly circular, but the paint is not inside them perfectly circular. All right, so we've kind of got our little dollop of orange paint there. And I'll probably, after it dries, go over this with gel and then put another layer of orange over it so that way it actually looks like raised layer of paint. And now for the yellow, and it's going to be kind of a weird little whatever kind of right here. And we've got a bit of a yellow. We'll have to go over top of that with a little more vibrancy. Okay, and now we're going to have a little like squiggly thing of green. And this is definitely going to require another layer because this is very streaky over this spot. I'm not liking this anymore. I'm thinking I'm going to have to paint that back white. And then put like rainbow stripes in it. I think that's what I'm going to have to do, like rainbow pinstripes. Because I don't currently love it. It just doesn't work in my head. All right, and now we're going to do a blue smear. Yeah, we're going to say that the purple and the pink are kind of on the back side of the skirt. Oh, thank you, hun. I'm pretty happy with it so far. We're going to say that the purple is a weird shape, kind of like that. If at any point you feel like your shapes are looking too uniform or the same, just kind of go over it and stick like a random bump in it somewhere. Because you do not want them uniform. You want them all uniquely strange. That's what we're going for here. Uniquely strange. Thank you. I still have to fix the bow, put in her paintbrush, and then add in her shoes, and we'll finish the crazy eyes that she's got going on and give her a mouth. There's still some work to do. But we'll get there. We'll get there. And like I said, I don't like the bow, so I'm going to paint it back in white. And I'm going to put pinstripes there instead, like rainbow pinstripes. I want to create this dress in real life. This is a real life goal for me. I even want the like bow fascinator that I'm kind of making as part of an accessory. I want it. I want it in real life. I need to make this. And I think I would do this with like felt on top of like a base white skirt. Well, dress. Realistically, I'd probably do it with a dress. There. And I'm going to fix my directionality. Make sure all the brush strokes are coming from the same direction. All right. Put it back in white. Yeah. This one actually would be a pretty simple dress. It shouldn't be too hard. Shouldn't be, anyway. All right, do another quick layer of the green. I'm wanting to kind of get rid of most of those brush strokes. And then on the blue as well, just another quick little layer. I'll have to remember to give Dave another thank you. This works amazingly. When I push on the canvas, it doesn't go anywhere. Super excited about that. It's the little things. Okay, and because I'm thinking pinstripes, I'm going to use my angle brush. And actually, no, I think I will use just my tiniest detail brush. I think that might wind up being easier. So I'm gonna just do, like, if it's a good idea to anchor your wrist down whenever you're needing to do stripes, and then just let it continue on its natural way. Okay. Add some yellow. Makes me think of that zebra stripe gum. Couldn't even tell you what the flavor is, but I know it's the zebra stripe gum. It always made me think of the Toys R Us logo. Green. And I think it was mostly just red, orange, yellow, green. I think that was it for its like stripes. Ooh. If you're ever having trouble getting a clean line, add a little water to your brush, and that should help. And then pink. And then we'll start the rainbow again. Red, orange, yellow, and I think we're going to have green be the last one here. Right, now I'm going to repeat it on the other side. It was like, can you think of what the flavor was? Like, what was the flavor on that gum? I just don't even know what to call it. Was it just fruity? Like, was that what its thing was? Was it just fruity and not a specific fruit? Like, what fruit profile did it have? Okay. Now I'm going to do my stripes on the other side. And if you're anything like me, you might need to flip your canvas to do this because it makes it easier. Oop, I need to add a little water to my brush. I'm having trouble with a line. Red. Orange. Yellow. Green. They have some of the coolest merchandise for the Epcot Festival of the Arts. They have like purses that look like paint buckets. Ugh, God, I wish I could be in the parks right now. Although I think now the Festival of the Arts is pretty much over and they're prepping for the Flower and Garden. But I love the Flower and Garden Festival too. It's one of my favorite festivals. Basically like everything but food and wine. Not that I don't like food and wine, but I don't like the crowds at food and wine. Those are just stupid without reason. Red. Orange. Yellow. And green. Okay. Flip it back over. All right, now we're going to start talking fruit stripe. Oh, you can still buy it on Amazon, really? Nice. So, I wonder if I always kind of thought that was something that kind of got ended in the 90s. Happy to be wrong. Okay, we're going to talk about the eyes a little bit now because they look still a little demonic. So we're going to go ahead and start actually giving her some pupils so she doesn't look so much like a demonic spirit. And I'm going to use so little of this black, I'm just going to put it 94. When it was invented was 94. That's probably why I equate it with my youth. That would have 94 would have put it in first grade for me. Either the end of first or the beginning of second. Something along those lines. All right, so with the way that she's looking, we're going to say that right here is kind of where the pupil is. She's kind of looking down at her toes. She's being artsy and cute, as you do. And I'm going to leave this out because she's going to need eyelashes because Homegirl cannot have eyelashes. Like, she cannot be without them. And I'm thinking she should also have kind of a soft blue eye. Maybe to kind of match her thing here. And I'll give that a second little coat too. Oop. Okay, and go around the pupil. Around the pupil. And your eyes have light to them, naturally. Like when you're looking, your eyes are looking at things. It's going to have light reflected back in them. So I'm going to use my brush to add a little white dot into the pupil to kind of tell that tiny bit of story about the light source. And I'm going to put just a couple because, well, maybe I'm looking at a camera flash. Maybe there's camera flash happening. You know, if you wear a pretty dress, people take your picture. Or at least that's been my experience. There. So she's got light in her eyes now. And I'm going to kind of put a little more going on to this belt. There. All right, and now I'm going to line the top of her eyes because Homegirl is wearing eyeliner because she's pretty and all. So I'm going to, on this top angle, I'm going to put a black line because that's where her eyeliner would be, following the top of her eye. And now I am going to kind of just flick softly to create some lashes. And naturally the corners are going to be a little bigger and they're going to stick up a little more. Yes, I actually think this would look really great with like a multi-layer rainbow crinoline underneath, so you would see the different layers vertically of the different colors of the crinoline, like stacking them on top of each other for a very full dress. So this would have to be like a double circle for extra volume. So she's got her eyelashes. Now she doesn't have any eyebrows yet. Her eyebrows are also going to be yellow or going to be red ochre. Not the eyebrows have to be super matchy matchy, but I like them that way. And they're going to go there. So she's got kind of her eyebrows going on there. And we might say that she's got a little bit of like, maybe a little bit of, no, we won't do mascara on her under eye. That's just too mean. That's too much risk in Florida sunshine. Let's instead go ahead and work on her lip. I need a little more red on my palette. I did dilute and get rid of most of my red, so I'm going to work right out of my cap because I don't need all that much. And we're going to do just a simple kind of thin lip. When in doubt, when you're doing paintings, the corner of your mouth should match up under your pupil. And I'll come back to that and give it another coat in a minute. I do think I want to kind of outline the bow though in this blue that I like so much. Just because it is my favorite color, and since I put it as the waist for the belt and I'm going to put it as my shoe color, it has to be incorporated into the hair bow someplace because, well, that's how I would do it in real life. And it helps kind of differentiate the bow against this yellow. Next course of action is the shoe. Shoes are next. And shoes are kind of an espadrille. And if you really wanted to, you could do like the shoe strap a different color than the little base underneath. I haven't decided if I will or won't. Normally you would see the bottom of an espadrille as being kind of a neutral tan color. And I'm not really about the tan. I usually wind up painting the bottoms of my espadrilles, even in real life, so that they're more colorful. But we'll go ahead and put in the ankle strap. And what would be an across the toe strap. And you have to make sure you angle this, because remember it's being kind of coming up from the side. And then this one, it should also be kind of angled, but kind of going this direction. And because you're pointing your toe, the top of your foot, where your ankle is more up here. Like we're indicating that this leg is further back in the shadow than this one. And then across the front. And I think I'll paint it in white and see how I feel about it before I decide what color I'm going to make it. So the bottom of the heel would kind of go here and kind of like that. And then for this one, it would kind of be off to the side this way. And it would be more narrow since we're only seeing the slightest little bit of this shoe. And I think I would like it better if it were all, well, no, I think I like it that way, but I think I'm going to stick some stripes on it in my blue. Because I can totally see me doing that in real life. Having painted like Queen of Hearts shoes, Cheshire Cat shoes, Sheriff Nottingham shoes. I paint shoes a lot. I'm not sure why, I just do. But it makes sense since I use stripes up in her bow to continue the theme somewhere down here. And I didn't want it to be rainbows. It's not there. I kind of wanted to repeat the pattern of this a little more. And this one, because of the way her shoe is actually pointing, it will go this way. And you don't really see anything past there, because at that point what you're seeing is the top of her toe. All right, so now we're going to do a little more work on our little fun palette piece, our palette skirt. It needs a little more work. So paint is also not uniform when it hits the sun. You would see little dapples of light and, light refracted back through it. So I'm actually going to stick just in some sections, just a little bit of mixed in yellow to kind of create a little bit of a lighter shade in some places where maybe paint has partially dried, like if they were, you know, being that realistic. But I don't want it all one uniform color. And then for the yellow, I'm going to do a couple of areas in a second coat to make it that much darker. And I might just stick just a tiny bit of like a little bit of white in some areas so that it has some areas that are a little lighter. And the green, I actually want to do another quick cover because I still see a lot of my brush strokes and I don't want that. And with that done, I'm going to stick a little bit of white in a couple of areas to create some areas that are like a lighter green maybe. And then on the other side, get a little more of our blue down for good coverage. And I'm actually going to stick a tiny bit of my turquoise in there in a couple of areas to lighten it up so it doesn't look uniformly colored. And the purple needed a little more line removal too, so I'm going to do a quick layer of my purple. And a little bit of white in a couple of areas just to lighten it up in a couple of spots so it's not all uniform. All right, now I'm going to use water on my brush to get rid of some of my excess chalk lines from when I put my design in. Clean up my lines a little bit. All of that should be dry enough for me to remove my chalk lines. Okay, and I'm going to do a little bit of detail work up here in the bust because we haven't really indicated any like value in the top part. So we're just going to tell the story of that a little bit. I'm going to kind of mix the white back into it because I don't want it to be overwhelming. I just want to show that there are maybe some seams happening, that this fabric has some texture. And I do think I'm going to stick a little kind of bow off the side. Like maybe it's kind of in the background there. I like my bows. What can I say? All right, I'm feeling pretty happy with it at this point. I do think she needs a necklace. And I'm going to use a dotting tool, but you could use the back end of your paintbrush. And I'm going to give her kind of like a rainbow pearl collection because I think that would be fun. So I'm going to take some red. And I'm going to do a quick like little line of dots going kind of draping around her neck. And they're not connected. We're using kind of the concept of illusion here to show that they're connected. Your mind will want to try to connect them without me doing the work. And then a layer of orange. I don't know if yellow will show up. We'll give it a try. Right, and then a little layer of green. Blue's next. And then purple. Maybe this is like an illusion neckline on this. And then pink. And for fun, we'll go ahead and say that she's wearing like a rainbow bracelet too. We're going to deck her out. And I'm just gonna put the lines like right beside each other so it looks like one thick bangle. So this would be really cute for like Pride Month too. Kind of like it. All right, and I'm gonna do just a little more dot detail just because I really like that. Just a little bit of like kind of white in the middle of like my palette. Actually, no, I won't do it quite like that. I'll do it a little differently. Change my mind. It's my prerogative to change my mind. I'm an artist. We do this. It happens. Instead, I think I'll do it like they do when we're trying to indicate like shiny eyes. A couple of like white lines instead, following the contours. There. Right, and I think I'm going to just stick some paintbrushes in her hair, and then I'm going to count her done. For the paintbrushes, most of my paintbrushes are sort of a light blue, but that doesn't really go here. I think we're going to go with a traditional kind of idea that paintbrushes should have wooden handles. So I'm going to use brown, if I can find it. There it is, because I'm wanting burnt umber. Right, and I'm going to say that it's going to be coming out of like this area. And I'm going to have one brush going that way and sort of one brush going this way. And we're going to say that it has kind of a yellow ochre bristle. And a paintbrush would normally have like new seeming like clips. They have sort of a tip like that. So we'll do that too. And we'll put a little bit of a bracing on the brush because there would normally be a little bit of bracing there. And then maybe a second little line up at the top. And I kind of want to do a little quick touch up on the lip, darken it up. And I'm gonna take a little bit of white and do a highlight on the cheek. And I'm going to take a little bit of that pink and I'm going to add a tiny bit of blush to her. And we'll soften it up in a minute. It's a little more vibrant than it needs to be. So I'm going to take some of my flush tone and mix it in. and then soften it out. Yeah, and now she's got her pretty blush. So our girl is stylish. She's finished. All I gotta do is sign her, and I'm gonna sign her in my color. Thank you for coming to hang out at the Diesel. Have a great night, everyone.